Hey, howdy.
Howdy, howdy.
Go to the bathroom now. You're shitting yourself.
Oh, Dab, you know what? I can't even share my screen. Oh, well.
Pretty good. I gotta take all that into account while still upholding the formalities of office culture. Trying not to crash out.
Mm. Green hats.
We live in the stupidest fucking time ever.
I was gonna bring that up as well.
Gay, gay, gay.
You could say that love is
I
misplaced.
was gonna mention
This
that
is not the place
thing,
for you,
'cause,
but hey, maybe it is. Maybe we
I've
can change your
actually
mind.
seen more news about that, and
Meanwhile,
Yeah, the photographer's jumping in.
Dude, you should see Erica Kirk's reaction.
yeah, the
I
minute
performed
Eric
it to the max.
starts crying, that's when you start fucking raising alarm bells.
I'm gonna take the opposite take on that one, just because I know from shooting ARs and stuff that far out, even if you took someone who had that good of a shot, who was an amazing shot, with that red dot combination, the dot covered his head. Like, unless you would need a much more precision shot type of rifle to get that close of a shot with the ear. Like, it actually. You would give you an idea, guys, an idea how different, like that difference between actually hitting and what hit that ear. Like, you would literally just need to do a slight shift with your hand, just even your hand would just throw that trajectory off. So, like that, as you had the most sharpshooter in the world, and even then, it's a pretty 50-50 chance. it would have thing. But at the same time, I do also believe that they just let it happen because they were hoping that they were going to hope that he got the shot, and then they were just going to gaslight everyone and saying, "Oh no, we did try to stop him, the rifle jam." But
Yeah, there were Secret Service on the roofs. They didn't do anything. There were people that saw the guy climb on the roof and were like, "Hey, police, do something about this," and they didn't do shit.
yeah,
The
it
FBI
was,
also
Even the
took
security
like
was
forever to
incredibly
respond.
lax.
they
The
are
paint
they are
they used was a fucking
I'm-
just, like a PR.
the only one I will fully admit that really did stick. I was gonna say, I'm think this is just my personal thought is a lot of these ones we might think they're staged, but honestly, I think it's just the fact that most of his a lot of people would benefit from him either getting severely injured or killed. So a lot of the Secret Service and stuff like some of these people might honestly be just being like, okay, we are gonna stop it, but we're not gonna give it 100%. We're gonna give it 80. But then you got the ones that actually are gonna try it, go for it. Like anyone with common, you cannot tell me after. Like I could believe the Butler one was pure incompetence on some part, but you cannot tell me they would not have completely overhauled everything. Because think about when was the last time we saw a president actually get shot? We gotta go all the way back to Reagan, and then we gotta go back to JFK.
Coincidentally, this was the same hotel that Reagan got shot at.
Assad.
Oh, can I share my wage rage right now?
Dude, that's illegal. Personal responsibility.
You know what? The funny thing is,
It's effectively a pay
Domino's-
cut.
I was gonna say Domino's is the only like pizza company that pays their drivers per diem, like, and it's only like 30 cents a mile.
Again, wow. Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so my wage rage, it's awesome. I'm not even making a wage. I'm not even on unemployed insurance. I have been looking for a job for months now. I have put in over 500 applications. Over 500. I go on Indeed. I've even thrown on, my nice collared shirt and jeans and just my Sunday best. Printed off my resume at the local library, walked into places, started handing them my resume. Hey, I'm looking for a job. Oh, go online. Oh, we're hiring freeze and all this shit. And I've only gotten 2 interviews and 4 rejections. And I'm not even applying to hoity-toity, highbrow stuff. I'm applying to entry-level stuff like 90% of the time.
Yes. No, it's going through gambling as well. I really like corporation.
Well, hey, guess what? I found a hole in your knowledge here, bud. Didn't you know that our Lord and Savior Donald Trump is giving us 50-year mortgages now? Come on, bro. How'd you not think of that?
Did you know our Lord and Savior Benjamin Netanyahu gives us mortgages if you're Jewish? forgetting about gambling. It's like very essential to boomers. Good.
Yeah, and to add to what Gamma just said, I said it earlier when we were pre-banter, but anecdotal though it may be, almost every time I've walked into a gas station with those predatory electric gambling machines, 90% of the time it's just old people in there slaving away at those things. It's wild.
Well, you were saying like being locked in.
I want the catcher to kill me.
Yep.
You're
Oh, wait, are you serious? This thing was not running the entire time. Okay, well, wow, that's crazy. So, yeah, I did not realize the volume was that low. So, appreciate it. Racism is whack. It shouldn't matter. It should be considered if someone is lousy or not. If someone isn't worth a damn, they'll just go about it. It is what it is. No, I'm not playing Warframe, Zendon. That's Gamma that's actually playing it. So, I've seen Chinese RVs going off-roaders, and the route of true, aspiring to children who one day vowed to make wonderful, yeah, something like that. Back to the person who was talking about Chinese vehicles, or like they love foreign labor. They love free market competition when it comes to using foreign labor to undercut domestic labor, but they won't allow, like, you know, foreign EVs in the United States. But I know I saw another comment earlier that talked a little bit about, you know, checking out a society with a mobile home. They're deliberately trying to make that. Is there a person on the team that I can email these plans to you on stream? You can just join the Discord server and just send it to me, and I'll make a video on it. I have no problem talking about...
Yeah, come on over.
Yeah, dude, yeah, seriously. No wonder we couldn't hear anything. I'm going to say something embarrassing in front of 30-some-odd people. Yeah, I didn't realize my microphone was off. So now I feel incredibly stupid, but, you know, roast me in the chat or something. So.
You dumb son of a bitch.
I know, right? All right. So, welcome to Wage Rage Radio. Welcome. Yeah, no wonder we couldn't hear a thing. Yeah, I use my OBS settings. I'm going to go ahead and explain it. So, I have like 3 tabs in Linux OBS. Yeah, bet, where's the link? Just go to the description of the video. Yeah, no wonder like the viewership was so stupidly low, because I wasn't even talking. So, I have like 3 tabs on my OBS streamer, okay? And one of them I use for recording, but the thing is, because the global microphone option in Linux OBS, I thought it was deeply radio. No, that's hilarious. But, like, that's kind of thing. It's like, there is one tab called global microphone, and I use that for recording is just because the fact is that's what I use for, like, recording video essays. And then I also have another one, which is for live streams, which is this one. But when I'm recording gameplay footage, which is what I was doing earlier, my stupid ass turned it off, didn't realize it's a global setting, and then it carried over to any of the other, like, scene graphs. There's a video where you say your boss supports worker competition, but not business competition. Yeah, absolutely, man. That's, in fact, the entire thesis of my channel on the criticism of the American ruling class. They love hiring foreign labor to undercut the domestic working class, but they will not allow competition. Like, even Micron is lobbying Congress to restrict Chinese manufacturers from making high bandwidth memories because they've been exposed on their little PR scam where they try to cooperate with Scam Altman to come up with this PR cover narrative of the fact that they wanted to engage in rent-seeking parasitism over RAM. Like, that's essentially the gist of it. They got busted on that. The Chinese took an advantage of it. Yeah, fair enough, Zendon. I'll slow down with my speaking, but the thing is they got exposed for that. And, you know, now they're just playing a cover thing, and they're trying to lobby Congress because they don't want competition undercutting their monopolistic rent-seeking. So, you know, I was just responding to people in the comments. Sorry if the racism comment sounded like it was way out of nowhere. It's not a big deal, Benelli, man. I'm just kind of opening up a... The funny part is that before my dumb ass realized the microphone wasn't even working, is that, you know, I had basically opened up a chat on my Discord server and was hanging out with a couple of people. I can give you the Discord. Let me go ahead and open it up for you if it's that big of a deal. Give me 1 sec. Let me go ahead and block. Here, I'll put a link to the Discord server in the chat if anybody is interested in joining. So, I was actually hanging out in the voice chat earlier today is because, you know, it's right before the work week. And, you know, a bunch of people asked if I was going to do Wage Rage Radio. I was only thinking about doing this like once a week is because the fact is that like the last one, not insulting the fact that you don't stutter to me is very baffling. I'm actually kind of flattered. I've never considered myself a public speaker, dude. I'm going to be real with you. I'm just somebody who gives my 2 cents in a microphone on the internet and, you know, people are free to take it or leave it. But my dumbass didn't realize for the last 15 minutes is that my microphone wasn't even on because of Linux OBS, because of a global setting that I was using to record more gameplay footage. So that's a fun fact, by the way. So, you know, roast me in the chat or whatever. So,
Leapy is
private...
here.
What's up, man?
Leapy is here.
Oh, okay. What's up, Spaghetti? Razor Waltz, how you doing, man? Welcome to the chat. Let's get the Wage Rage Radio going, okay? You know, it's right before the work week, and we all know, I know all of you are excited to go into the wage cage tomorrow, so you can earn hard taxpayer dollars to pay them to rich pedophiles that will tell you that you're going to be perpetual renters in your homeland. I know you're excited about that. I know you're so excited about being pay pigs for rich pedophiles who live in their mansions in the countryside. Well, you know, you have to wage away in the big city paying highly extortionate rent prices. So let's put some green hats in the chat, shall we? Like, let's just get some green hats. Let's flood the chat with some green hats. Let's get some wage rage going. Because I know you guys are just ready for the work week. How about you guys?
Yeah, get them fucking green caps in the fucking chat.
Yeah, dude,
man.
let's get some green caps in the chat. Let's get some green caps. What's up, Matty
like
Q? Hope you're doing well.
Ready for the damn formalities, but what you said earlier about like locking in to houses, I've told you, I have the GI Bill ready to go, and I'm pretty much discouraged. I don't really see a reason to buy someone out of this predicament while putting myself in another one. So yeah,
my dumbass gave a whole talk on how to build wealth through housing, and my mic wasn't even working. Fun fact. So I'm gonna have to give that talk all over again. Yeah, housing is a scam. You know, I actually hate it. Like, I know somebody typed in the chat a little bit earlier that owning a house is a scam, and it is and it isn't. Okay, because like, here's the interesting thing: when it comes to owning a home, like, what kind of house should you buy? You want something that basically retains values because you want to sell it. Okay, so interesting fact about building wealth in a house, okay, and why it's so unaffordable is that the average house price is $500,000, and current interest rates, if you haven't looked, is right around 7%. Okay, so if you take a loan, a standard home loan at a 7% interest rate, maybe like 5% down, so you can have a minimum for a conventional, you're going to be paying like $4,000 a month in a mortgage payment every month. But here's the funny part, okay? This is how crazy it is. Not only are you paying $4,000 a month in a mortgage payment, which I don't think anybody have that kind of income level in the chat? I don't think any of you guys do. I know I don't. I wish I did. I wouldn't be here if I had that income level. Is that, you know, not only that, you have to also have like a 5% down payment of like $500K, so about 25 grand to basically make a down payment on your 5% conventional. So here's the secret about property ownership that I went on a rant. I did not even realize my microphone was off when I was trying to give an educational lesson on the reality that boomers live and then the realities that we live. Is because for the United States, if you want to live where you don't feel like a perpetual alien in your own homeland, if you don't want to live where you feel like you have no place to truly call your own home, you'd obviously want to own a home. But here's the problem. Is that, you know, you actually have to build wealth in it as a vehicle to actually get to a point where you have no mortgage payment anymore. And the difficult part is it used to be much more affordable where, you know, house prices, like, yeah, you could get a mortgage, but you could make advance payments. Yeah, let's not even mention repairs. This is a fun one because I saw an earlier comment. I was going to respond to it, Zendon, like whether or not you should go for a new construction or a used boomer one, okay? And the funny part is that, like, they're both going to have their trade-offs. If you're going to go for a home right now, if you go for a used one, you know, you don't know what problems you're going to be inheriting with it, what legacy technologies you have, or like what problem. It's like you will see like a 300K house that's falling apart, and it will have termites or some shit, and you know, the boomer will basically post it on Zillow being like, well, at least it has good bones. And your mortgage payment would be about $2,500 a month. So here's the thing about like home ownership, okay? In principle, if you own your own home, the only thing you have to pay for is property taxes. There's an entire generation of boomers who live in a completely separate reality from us, where they do own their own home. They don't have any housing costs other than property taxes and maybe groceries at best. And so the thing is, they could sell their home and they could go anywhere. You ever wondered like how people buy properties in like Seattle and they're like 800K or whatnot? Is because, or even California, at one point or another, yeah, the boomer, I know my worth, fuck you got mine. That's their favorite saying. But the thing is, at one point or another, those houses were cheap. I found a YouTube video on the shorts feed where a boomer was celebrating that he bought a $5,000 property in New York City for 70 grand in the 1970s, and it's obviously worth like 1.5 million. The bones are being eaten by the termites, yeah, and it's got good bones. I know my worth. You know, you have to pay for my you know, inflated property for 300K and at a 7% interest rate, and that's a $2,500 a month mortgage payment. But in principle, if you wanted to actually get rid of your housing cost, where you could actually like basically erase your housing costs, you would want to own a home. Okay, Texas has one of the highest property taxes in the United States, with an annual property tax bill of approximately $4,000. Yeah, I believe that. But the thing is, with housing costs, like when it comes to owning a home, right? You know, that would be a vehicle where you could settle down and own your own home and not have any housing costs, and that would maybe address the cost of living crisis just a little bit. That's at least the idea. But the thing is, even me and my wife have looked at houses, and even the smaller ones are not that much, you know, cheaper than the big ones. So in principle, when it comes to like housing cost, you know, you could, if you made advance payments, because let's talk about compound interest loans, because I talked about that a little bit before I realized I was retarded and my microphone was muted, is because I was, you know, trying to record gameplay footage earlier. But let's talk a little bit about compounded interest loans. Okay, we all know that we pay rent towards properties. If you're renting an apartment, you're paying rent towards a place that you're renting. Okay, you know, when it comes to a home loan, the only difference is instead of renting the property, you're paying rent on the money, and that's what interest is. And so the way a 30-year conventional loan or a 30-year loan typically works is whatever interest rate it has, you'll have a certified mortgage rate. Okay, and you know, with this compounded interest, yeah, don't get too crazy, Goyam, in my chat, or I'm gonna have to mute you. But the thing is that like with a compounded interest loan, is that in principle, if you make advance payments towards it, you can actually pay it off quicker, and then you can refinance and then have a cheaper mortgage, and then essentially the housing costs go down, at least in principle. The problem is with how expensive like property prices are. Pray for the workers dying from overwork. Yeah, I know, right? We're kind of gotten to like so bad with that right now. But like, the thing about like a compounded interest thing is that if you take 360, what's up, Ghosted? Yeah, I know, right? I wasn't expecting to do a stream. I'm not going to do it too long. I'm going to be doing this for about, I want to say another 30 minutes, maybe hour or so, because the fact is I don't want to stay up too late, but I do want to like basically do like, the reason I'm doing a stream is because a couple of people asked in my chat, is because I had a pretty big voice chat. They asked me if I was going to do more Wage Rage radio streams, and I said, if it becomes popularly requested, yes, I'll do that. But I felt like the last stream went on a little bit too long. Ghosted can attest to that, because I know he was waiting to jump off. He's like, this is going way too long. I was thinking the same thing, but I don't like to waste people's time. I kind of like to get straight to the point, which is kind of funny, is because when I'm rambling about like housing cost, I feel like I'm all over the place on this one, but I'll get back into it. In principle, you know, with a compounded interest mortgage, whatever mortgage payment, say you bought a 300K house, you have a $2,500 a month mortgage payment, and your loan is over 360 payments, which is your standard, you know, 30-year loan, right? Over the lifetime of that loan, if you pay exactly all those mortgage payments on time, you are going to pay over the lifetime of that loan probably about $1 million worth of money that you're just losing paying rent on the money. Okay? I know, 20 minutes without audio. Okay, everyone make fun of Alistair for being a dipshit in the chat. He deserves to be roasted for that one. So
send
like
him straight to hell.
No, that was
Yeah.
honestly the fault of me too. Being
No, it's not you. I was doing gameplay recording. I didn't realize.
I should have been keeping tabs on it. We all fumbled.
Yeah, they could hear you. They couldn't hear me, so they figured it was just like pre-Wage Rage Radio or something like that. So, over the lifetime alone, you're going to be losing like $1 million on a property, and that's lost wealth if you really think about it, right? And so the thing is the way compound interest loans work is that if you pay it in advance, I know the last 20 minutes of where I'm going on like an awesome speech and I'm more coherent then than I am now. Yeah, I'm blaming the CIA for that one. More coherent then than I am now over like talking about home loans is that if you pay off these home loans, early, if you put extra payments into the principal, because any additional payments you pay towards the loan is going directly to the principal, you basically kill off the interest of that loan. That is how these loans work. And so it's incentivized where if you pay extra towards the principal, you can pay off the home loan really quickly. And this is a privilege I honestly really hate about boomers. I talked about it with my wife when we were driving out. We were like driving around town because we were bored and whatnot. Is that I hate boomers so much is because in their time off of a factory income, they could afford a house and they could make advance payments onto a home loan to pay off a house and have zero housing costs within a relative, quick period of time. That is why I hate boomers a lot of the time. One person was getting mad at me for being too hateful towards boomers in like a chat or something like that.
You're
And I
just
said,
jealous.
You don't hate them enough.
it was something stupid like that. Yeah.
You just hate successful people, man.
Guys, you're pulling too many people on the stage. Yeah, I'm just saying. One at a time. Go ahead and start bringing it back to the original crowd, put people back in the audience. But the reason I hate boomers is because, hypothetically, they lived in a world where the vast majority of money that they made didn't go to housing. Think about it this way. If you bought the starter home, like it's not even a starter home, it's literally falling apart, $300K, 7% interest rate, $2,500 a month mortgage rate. A mortgage payment, okay? So to make it where it's not eating into your income tremendously, you want to go for the 30% mark. So you need to be making a post-tax income of $7,500 a month to be able to afford just an entry home off of a single income. I've already said multiple times that I couldn't afford a home unless my wife worked, and that's basically how I own a home, and that's just barely, by the way. But, even if you go for that $300K falling apart boomer home that's been probably addled and filled with bullets or something like that over the last 50 years because it's in the middle of the hood or something like that, is that most people do not have the income to make advance payments to kill off that mortgage debt to actually have zero housing costs. And so that's why I hate boomers, is because they exist in a reality where they have mostly paid off their homes and they had the opportunity to pay off their homes where they didn't have to worry about being homeless, where they could pay off these mortgages in advance to basically have zero housing costs, while all of us, and doing the pre-week wage rate radio, are essentially, we're paying rent that's significantly higher than their mortgages to something that has no value. Why don't you just build your own home? That's easier said than done. I wish it was that easy, dude, but even if you look at the new constructions, you're going to tell me, Goyam Kaczynski, that you're gonna quite literally make a home for cheaper than the new builds that are already being built on the market right now. I'd be really impressed. One of the comments earlier I've seen in the chat is that a lot of people just want to check out from Civilization. I genuinely wish it was that simple. Like I said before, it's why do you think I made that Evil Morty reference? Is because his entire thesis of his character is not about conquering the world. It's not about revenge. It's just about checking out from a fucked up reality that he doesn't want to be a part of. That's why I like his character. And I bet you most people in this audience would love to just check out of this society and just kind of go off the grid. That's Philosophical Gamer's entire talking point. I love his channel. But they're literally making it almost virtually impossible to check out from the society. And that's the problem. Not everybody has rich parents like Luke Smith. Exactly. If we did have rich parents, we'd love to check out of society. But unfortunately, welcome to Wage Rage Radio, is that because we don't have rich parents, we got to get into the Wageway Express, aka the freeway, and spend an hour commuting into work every day just to afford the place that we don't even get to spend the majority of our time living in. Because you don't want to be in the South. Yeah, I'm from the South too, man. We're all in this together. Razor Welts. Because you don't want to be in the South. I hate this place. I get the frustration, man. But I always thought the North was really cool. But the thing is that it's slightly better here in the South. Because I looked at places in the North, and the housing prices are way more expensive. If you want to talk about peak boomerification, you look at a lot of these northern states, and they're $800K. Washington State, very beautiful state. Yeah, maybe except for Seattle.
Beautiful.
The average house price is $800K, man. I can rag on the South just kind of sucking in a sort of sense, and it being hot. But the thing is that you kind of grew up here, you're kind of stuck with it, but it's still nominally better than a lot of northern places. Gentrification and property value is always going up, even in the hood. Yeah, no, that's kind of the thing. It's like the eternal boomer and BlackRock have decided, you know, we're going to make everybody perpetual renters in their own homeland so their asset prices can go up forever. If there were no regulations I had to follow, I could build a 500 square foot den, a 400 square foot den with all the basic needs for 40 to 50K. I don't know about that, because the fact is they have been building smaller properties and they're still like 250. Maybe that's not a bad thing, is because, you know, if we were going to do per square foot, you know, comparison, if you were to look at the average house in the 1950s, you know, the houses that like the silent generation, not the silent generation, but the greatest generation coming back from World War II had, it was about like a 1,000 square foot, 2-bed, 2-bath house. And so the fact is, I would be okay with that. But the problem with those houses, man, is that they're not 40K, they're not 50K. They're like literally like, if you were to do bang for buck in comparison of houses, a McMansion would literally be nominally more expensive than a house that's similarly, you know, that size. Even though, like, literally 1,000, like a house that's 3 times in size will only be nominally more expensive than a 1,000 square foot 2-bed, 2-bath. The North also has the season of bitter cold. That's absolutely true, but we have sweltering heat. And, you know, I guess that's one positive thing about the South. But, you know, and I don't know, some people call that positive. Some people move to the South because they like the sweltering heat. Does everyone agree that democracy can't work when a politician only responds to the donor class, private funders, and campaigns? Can democracy be saved from private money? Only through workers' democracy. And, you know, I've already said that plenty of times. What's up, Dissident? Welcome to the chat. Is that, like, when it comes to democracy, why I'm a supporter of workers' democracy is because the fact is the incentive structure is completely different, where you do have a completely different incentivized structure where people elect leaders based on competence within their workplace. And that's not to say it's perfect from corruption, but, you know, it has a different incentive structure which allows, you know, people to select leaders based on competency and of who's going to lead civilization the best. I mean, even at my current workplace, I know who's more competent than me, and I usually try and nod and say, like, okay, your decision's probably going to be better than mine. Okay? There's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses near me for like 100K. All right, you're lying. Post the Zillow links. I don't mean to be an asshole, but anybody who says there's a 3-bed, 2-bathroom house near me for 100K, I'm immediately skeptical until you start posting the Zillow links. I'm sorry, dude. Post Zillow links or it's a lie.
Congrats on
They have to be living in
Alaska.
Alaska. They have to be
I
living
can
in
really
Alaska.
only believe that, yeah, if it's like Alaska or this person got a deal
Alaska's
because they
not
know
even
someone.
that cheap. I would, but the thing is that a lot of the times, like, boomers will do the, like, well, just don't live, you can't choose where you want to live, and they'll try and recommend you to live in a place that literally has 0 jobs. That's another boomer gaslight. Just live in a place that has a lower cost of living, but where there's conveniently no jobs. But again, I said that in my videos. This is how rich people gaslight poor people into being privileged when they're actually not, is because they'll say, just move to the countryside where there's no jobs, even though, like, by definition, if you're proletarian, you have to sell your labor to live. So you have to go where the jobs are at, and that just so happens to be the big city. And so really, the only people going to the countryside are quite literally rich people who have a ton of asset wealth on paper. I'd rather burn in the heat than freeze in the cold, not gonna lie. I dislike the cold quite a bit. I actually kind of like the cold, but I'm from literally the South, where it snowed like, I can count on my left hand how many times it snowed in my life. So maybe that's just my dumb southern ass not realizing how cold things can get. So I can't say for sure. People have told me that. That's just me being a dumb southerner. It has to be in the middle of nowhere, where in Indiana, where there's no jobs. And that's the problem. The only people who could move out there are basically rich pricks who have a ton of asset wealth. Like I said earlier in the video, it's like with boomers, when they have a ton of asset wealth and housing, you can sell your house and go anywhere in the country, and that's what they do. Like, that's why they've been taking over Montana. That's why property prices have been going crazy in Montana. Is because the fact is you can't go there unless you have a ton of asset wealth, and anybody who's working class doesn't have that asset wealth. And the worst part is when people become apathetic, mouse utopia. It's happening in China, the demographic collapse, no stimulus response till future collapse. Yeah, that's the thing. The problem with apathy is that I hate the doomer posting. I hate the YouTubers who are just, so full of doomer posting. It's like, it's like, I can't do nothing, bro. We're just gonna be ruled by rich pedophiles forever, dude. I might as well just give up and, I'm not gonna say it on this stream, but the thing is like, I hate doomer posters because all they do, it's like, there's a couple of YouTubers, their thumbnails, it's like, it's over. The rich pedophiles have won. You're gonna have to go jump off a bridge if you want to escape from their grasp or some stuff like that.
I mean, I'm gonna be real, I will say this, and I won't do it in a Fed posty way, but I've said this before: if everything falls apart with me, I will gladly find the nearest CEO and discuss future job opportunities for myself. Just saying.
No comment.
Very tactful
Nonetheless. So, like, that's kind of the interesting. Don't worry, the Europors are going to be Americanized as we speak. No, unironically, I was watching them dismantle, healthcare in the UK by arguing that Americans have to pay more, and so that's why they need to dismantle, like, public healthcare in Europe. Yes, that was literally their argument. It was the most oinker-level shit that they're saying, well, Americans should pay more, so Oinker comes on in and says, well, we need to get the Europors to pay more, too, and so we got to dismantle all the social democratic policies.
Oh, yeah, you're forgetting about the
Europe.
Canadians, but, I mean, Canadians, are just Americans anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't.
Even in the countryside, houses are $550K. I'm going to tell you a little secret about the countryside. I mean, it seems like I got a lot of Southerners in my chat, and maybe that's like, YouTube's geolocation crap or whatever, right? But like, if you're from the South and you're from the countryside, the one thing you probably notice is like the massive expansion of oversized 5,000 square foot cardboard shit boxes for rich people to come to the countryside to act like their country. I can't stand these people, man. It's like they just build these giant, oversized 4,500 square foot properties, and they just come in here and then they're like posting on Twitter about how they're true country or some shit. They're the most insufferable people on the face of the planet. But yeah,
we need to bring back like shame culture.
Yeah, real. Hello again. What's up, Christian Duncan? Welcome to the chat. The only thing you can do are illegal. Well, obviously, that would get me taken down. But people can express their wage rage in the chat, and that's the whole point. Is because the fact is don't go full crash out mode if you don't need to. That's the whole reason I'm kind of starting this, is so people can kind of chill and chat, because we're all at the behest and mercy of rich pedophiles. And so what else can we do right now other than organize and try and find a way to share experiences? That's the truth of it. Meth towns and the PNW are not even that cheap. No, that's funny. Like, a boomer was getting like dogpiled on Twitter about trying to propose like some meth house. It was literally falling apart. He's like, you could move to this, no-name state where there's no jobs and like no way to actually like buy this house for $300K, and then you look at the backside of it from Google Street Maps, and like the backside of the house is missing. And I remember posting that, being like, half of the house is missing. How is this even like remotely habitable, man? A proper high-speed rail and proper public transportation infrastructure can alleviate a lot of the commute issues. Absolutely. That's one of the things that I've argued for, and there's a couple maps. I'm going to get to you next, TIE Fighter, but let me go ahead and make this point real quick, then I'll move to you. But, a high-speed rail between every major urban center in this country would do this country a world of good. And the funny part is, I don't even have to sell it to like the working class to say this is a good thing. I have a way of selling it to the bourgeois class, is because the fact is, wouldn't they, I don't understand why they don't fund these things, is because the fact is, don't they want access to cheaper labor? If we had efficient public transportation where people didn't need cars, or, and they could walk to their job or something like in these urban centers, and they had good public transportation, that would reduce transportation costs significantly. That you wouldn't have to be paying for gas, you wouldn't have to be wasting time into driving into the office because Amazon wants to do its stupid return to office policy. You could have, and on top of that, you wouldn't have as much of a homelessness issue, is because the fact is, with efficient public transportation, you wouldn't need a car to get back on your feet or take a job. But they don't do that here. They quite literally pass as many costs to the working class and then wonder why things don't work or somebody chimps out. My Europor mind is boiling. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and let you go, Ty, if you still got your thought. Oh, who was next?
Are you talking? Oh, no, not me.
Somebody was like interjecting. I said, you're going to go next. And I don't remember who it was, because I've been paying attention to the chat.
I don't know.
I think
I was just going to respond. I was just going to respond real quick. When you think about the rich as basically just like overdose druggies, then it makes a lot of sense why they act the way they do.
Yeah, that's kind of thing. One of the things like Alex Jones did for a very long time was prop up this narrative that we're controlled by lizard demons that have advanced intelligence. And as I got older, I began to realize like how stupid these people actually are. And when you realize that fact, it all makes sense. Is because if they were actually advanced lizard demons that were hyper intelligent, they wouldn't be alienating critical elements of the bourgeois state, which could antagonize a revolution. Yet here we are.
As for describing it that way just makes it seem so much cooler than our actual situation is. Our situation is so fucking pathetic, and yet like shit like that, like, oh, they're lizard demons. They're like Satanists. They're like occultists. It just makes it
A
sound
literal
so much fucking cooler than
psychological
it is.
response
Yeah.
for coping with something you don't understand.
The funny part is that, like, similar in, like, before the May Revolution and the October Revolution in Russia, it's not anything new that people came up with these conspiracy theories about the ruling class. Like, you know, what's his name, Rasputin? People thought he was a wizard that was puppeting the Tsar. Like, you're gonna have populist, like, you know, narratives like that pop up when the ruling class gets dumb or does degenerate shit. You know, they thought he was like a demon wizard that was controlling the Tsar. But yeah, Five Guys, bro, was like $20. Dude, Five Guys has always been expensive, even before COVID, but now they're like $30. I don't even know about
going
$20,
to Five
man. They're
Guys
like
just
$30.
basically
It's
equivalent
gone
to
up
being
that
fucked by
much?
Five Guys.
Jesus.
Five Guys, $30, Five Guys and $30 fries. You gotta love
I mean,
that.
if you go to
That's
Five
crazy.
Guys, you're just getting fucked by Five Guys.
Essentially,
The reason why we don't have
So, I
trains,
haven't-
by the way,
Oh.
the reason why we don't
Go on.
have trains is it's a lot of NIMBY shit. People don't want public
it is.
transportation near their house, and so the government has to either use eminent domain and be locked up in court for years,
People are boomers.
or alternatively
Yeah.
buy out the people. And we really do
Yeah.
need to make eminent domain a little bit easier.
That's true, absolutely.
Especially
I do
considering
have a
the fact
couple of
that you have
policy
shit
points.
boxes.
I do
Can
have
we
a
go for a
couple of
second?
points with that, is because we do need a method of rapid urbanization. Basically, as a city expands, you need to have a way where you can essentially, like, take properties. If you're going through urbanization, you're building like skyscrapers, you're building apartment complexes that are multi-level and stuff like that. You know, you need a way to basically incentivize it so you can start taking away like parking minimums and like going through the suburbs and just kind of saying like, okay, you know, we're gonna buy out your properties because we want to build an apartment complexes because we're having too high density living or something like that. And so we need a plan to basically allow a city to expand, but also not fuck up the infrastructure. That's the real problem. I'm going to continue reading through the chat. Guess who owns all the property? People are boomers. No, they own like 60% of their asset list is quite literally property wealth. Like the largest and most explosive growth in their wealth over the last 5 years has been in real estate. That's how bad it's gotten. And unfortunately, it's because the fact is, oh, what's up, man?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to like get rid of a lot of NIMBYs, just get rid of boomers. Honestly,
Yeah.
one way or
No, I
another.
mean, you're not wrong. Like, that's kind of thing. Yeah, 100%. But that's kind of thing. It's like seeing graffiti on the train carts while trying to drive to my job parking is a nice break that every now and then. Yeah. That's, gotta love that
Graffiti's
one.
awesome.
Gotta love. Yeah. Sims, Musk is Tony Stark. The funny part is Musk is like a discount version of Tony Stark. He's not even a good Tony Stark. It's like you begin to look at the ruling elite and you look at their background. I even talked about it in my last video that I uploaded, I think yesterday or whatever, right? It's like Bezos, or like, you know, the fact is that like he didn't even understand like what a von Neumann machine was. And it's impressive is because the fact is he did a background in electrical engineering. You do have to learn like some degree of like, you know, computer architecture, you know, at least logic gates. You know, there is a digital logic class that you have to take if you're studying electrical engineering. And I'm surprised you didn't even know that fact. About like a von Neumann architecture computers, because the fact is like, how are you going to make a computer that does no RAM and no CPU and still connect towards your server services? Like, think this through for a second. But again, I'm not expecting them to think it through, is because the same CEO of Google proposed the idea of, you know, space data centers without even addressing like the heat question. And I'm glad I got like another like major physics YouTuber called that shit out, and he ended up using the same arguments I did with a couple extra back of the hand like calculations. But like the shit that they do is so impressively stupid. And the interesting social dynamic is that if you ever work as an engineer professionally, that these people are calling the shots. And the funny part is that these people pride themselves on having social skills instead of actual technical skills, but then they don't even have social skills is because they're insufferable. If like these people actually had good social skills, they wouldn't have really bad PR now, would they? Like, you know, let's talk about the PR of the ruling class. They don't, like, nobody likes them. Because the fact is they're just perpetual gaslighters. If you notice that transition, and this is the funniest transition. You remember when tech CEOs used to say, like, Bill Gates has been coding since he was, like, a fetus or something like that? Yeah. You know, they ran that narrative for 20 years. And then over the last 5 years, they flipped it on its head. They replaced the American working class with a bunch of foreign labor, and they basically started saying social skills are more important than actual technical skills. It's an interesting one how they changed that narrative. Management is lucky people that were too stupid to get real skills. The thing is, it's like like I said in the last video, it's like you have these fail-son CEOs that are, you know, heading civilization level affairs. And at one point or another, a group of people can only fail up for so much, is because eventually this, the consequences of running a civilization like that comes home to roost, where you don't really have a choice at any point but to like adopt meritocracy to some degree or another. Meritocracy is inevitable, okay? Meritocratic civilizations will always dominate unmeritocratic civilizations. And so, like, yeah, we can, say it's inevitable that rich people, through their infinite nepotism, are going to fill these slots to eventually, control all of civilization. But the thing is, not every civilization has to do that, i.e. China, whose, Politburo is literally filled with doctors, lawyers, and engineers. And so a society that does respect meritocracy is going to outcompete a society that doesn't respect meritocracy. And so that makes the United States in an interesting condition, is because the fact is the United States either A, has to admit that you can't have infinite, rich people, taking infinite corporate welfare and change things. Meritocracy mogging, I like that word. They're gonna get meritocrat mogged by China. Is that, the thing is, A, they have to adopt some level of meritocracy where they put competent people in charge, or they get dominated by a society that does. There's really no way around that. Isn't Linux a self-replicating, or Linux machine a self-replicating drone? I don't know about that, man. I've never heard that one. I've never heard Linux ever being like a self-replicating drone. It's just an operating system, and technically it's really just the kernel, but I'm not gonna go full nerd face with a nerd emoji upon that one, because that's just
I'll be honest, I've never heard that one.
It's a nerd thing. Yeah, there's some autists. They're like, actually Linux is the kernel. What you're using is GNU plus Linux. If anybody's ever seen that video, I don't know about that.
So we're both using fucking Arch Linux. So we're both 300-pound femboys.
300 pounds. Yeah. If you use Arch Linux, you just immediately swell to 300 pounds. There's no other choice. No, a von Neumann machine. Sorry. Oh, okay. No, Linux is just an operating system that runs on the hardware. That's all that is. So that's news to anyone who uses Linux. Okay. Yeah. That's a fun one. You don't have to take it seriously. I'm just memeing in the chat. Watching this on Linux right now. Based Christian. Same here. I'm actually streaming this on Linux. I'm using CachyOS. I don't recommend it. I recommend based. But Bazite's another good Linux distro. But Linux is secretly Skynet plotting. I'm gonna be honest. Linux has actually been pretty good lately. I'm not gonna lie. I've been streaming and playing games on Linux for. I used to run a dual boot for 5 years, and I mostly used. Yeah, I saw the ID stuff with CachyOS. I might drop their shit. I'm using Arch, by the way. A 300-pound user right here. Welcome to the chat, man. I'm 300 pounds as well, Lonesome.
I'm personally using Garuda to play Warframe.
Which is also Arch-based.
Yep. So, I'm a 300-pound femboy now.
What? So what? Someone's asking why I don't recommend Cachy. I like Cachy, but the thing is that, it's a rolling update model. If I had the choice... Ubuntu is peak low-key. I've used Ubuntu for years. Is that, it's a rolling release. It always uses the latest stuff, which means it's something, there's always a possibility of something going to break. I like more LTS distros, and so, Debian is pretty much, what I usually like. I've used, some variant of Debian for the longest time. Linux Mint is a variant of Ubuntu. It's a fork of Ubuntu with FlatHub attached into it. CachyOS annoys the shit out of me. It keeps disconnecting me from the Wi-Fi. Okay, so I actually had that problem, as Grace Liberal. There is a power state setting, and if you want me to share my solution to that, because I had that issue with my Wi-Fi card too, basically you need to turn off the power saving thing to basically stop it from doing that. So that's how you fix that issue with CachyOS. But if you want a solid recommendation on using Linux these days, just, when it comes to package managers, just use FlatHub for ease of use. 90% of your apps do not need sudo or system perms. And so Bazite is an interesting distro, is because it pretty much, and so does Linux Mint, it has FlatHub built in to it, from the start. And so the fact is, whatever app you need is probably going to be on FlatHub, and it's mostly sandbox. Unless it needs system perms, you can use FlatHub for the vast majority of your apps, whether it be Krita, GIMP, Kdenlive, which I use for my video editing, OBS, whatever. The thing is, these are all Artistic Suite apps. They don't need system level perms to operate. Yeah, basically. Oh god, I'm flat packing. I get so much shit for flat packing, dude. I'm a flat packer, man. It's because I like to not use my operating system as much. I like to not work on it, which is kind of funny that I'm talking on Arch. But I don't like modifying it. I just want my apps to go and install them and just get them working. I am not. I don't like Arch for that very reason. Go on, man.
I was just gonna say, a little bit off topic here, but if anyone out there is still on Windows, I am begging you to switch to Linux. I nuked Windows a few months ago. It's so much better. Shop around, ask questions. Yeah, I did. Fucking ask questions, figure it out, but get the fuck off Microsoft for the love of God.
Yeah.
Microsoft.
Like, my main thing is that, like, whatever Linux distro that you want to use, I recommend just getting familiar with it and using it. The reason I chose Ubuntu for years is because, A, it's pretty standard. I learned about it in my first programming class when I was studying electrical engineering, and on top of that, it was one of the most supported operating systems for the longest time. I went for stability. Now, the reason I don't like Arch is because I like to use my operating system, I don't like to work on it. So when I have like a daily driver, I don't want to be tinkering around with my operating system. It's kind of awkward saying that as an engineer, but you know, I just like to use my operating system for daily affairs. And so that's why I usually don't recommend Arch-based distros, but that might be changing is because SteamOS is Arch-based, and a lot of operating systems like CachyOS seems to, I'm going to be honest, I don't mind CachyOS. There's a couple of like rough edges, but it fixed out. I got FlatHub installed through the Discover store through KDE, and it works just fine. I've been using it for a couple of months now, and I've used Ubuntu for like 5 years. And I really only uninstalled Windows completely probably just maybe last year at some point. I was like, okay, I got everything I wanted to work on Linux running on Linux, so I have no use for Windows, and I've just been using a pure Linux build for probably 6 months to 8 months now. I used to use a dual boot for years, but Linux has gotten good enough where I just don't care. Bottles? What's
the straw that broke the camel's back for me was Copilot.
Yeah, so I was originally told about Lutris, which was the way to install exes on Linux. And then I found out Bottles is another. Yeah, and then I found out Bottles exists, which is apparently a better program. And I've used it to download this game that I couldn't install for like 2 freaking years on SteamOS. It was crazy. Pokemon
you know the funny part about like what I use for my gameplay footage in Command & Conquer 3? Like, it runs better on Linux through Proton than it does natively on Windows. That's how garbage Windows is. I doubt digital ID will even properly be enforceable on Linux. It won't, and that's what I've been trying to tell people to calm down, is because while the Doom tubers were telling you that you're at the mercy of rich pedophiles for all eternity and they can back in infinite stuff, dude, if you're hosting an operating system in like Argentina, how are you going to stop somebody from actually like, you know, downloading that distro? Like, be real here, okay? How are you going to stop somebody from downloading an operating system from anywhere else in the world, not in the jurisdiction of the United States? Like, be real here, okay? And even if they were in the jurisdiction of the United States, how are you going to actually enforce like operating system vendors to actually, you know, maintain it? It's just going to essentially go the same way as corn sites, where they basically ask you if you're over 18, but the only difference is they're going to ask you before you download the operating system. And let's be real here, that's retarded. But again, I don't really expect a whole hell of a lot of intelligence from our lawmakers, because they're at the behest of rich pedophiles. But, you know, that's neither here nor there.
Also, remember Zuckerberg changed the verification system for Facebook. You have to give a video selfie now if you're creating or deleting an account.
Hell,
deleting? Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, they did that shit too. That's kind of the funny part, is because when, you know, it's like a lot of platforms have been doing this where they want to do like the whole like digital ID, which is basically what it is. They like to say it's age verification. It's like the car thing. They're like, they want to make sure nobody is drinking and driving. No, you want to be able to shut people's car off and engage in lawfare against them if they speak out against the rich pedophiles. Like, that's the true reason. Just like
they're already doing it. DRM in the battery.
Yeah,
basically. It's at one point or another, it's like I'm wondering if people are just going to go full Amish and just abandon technology as a whole, just because they're going to get sick of it.
I expect it, or at least like go to like retro or offline.
Yeah.
Digital ID is gay as fuck.
Yeah, like social media is not a necessary thing for most people, to be honest.
No, it isn't, especially with the older generations, the younger generations. That's why I said, like, I made that one video called The Great Grass Touching, is because at one point or another, people are just gonna, like, I deleted my Microsoft accounts. I don't use Microsoft. I hate Microsoft with a passion. Google was probably more difficult to actually get away with, and now I really only have this account as, like, my, you know, really only Google account nowadays. But yeah, no, like the thing is they're trying to make it as difficult as possible, where I liken them to a cancer or a disease. They're trying to get to a point where if you try to like remove them, they're going to kill the host. It's literally, it's like a parasitic vine. They have to basically get into, start home labbing. I need to, okay? Like, I'm pretty mid-witty when it comes to like, you know, home labbing, but that's something I might actually get into. Not gonna lie, I plan to go Amish at some point. Oh, hey, glad to see you there again. What's up?
Dude, if you're gonna go home labbing, make sure you have a bunch of storage.
Try not to start a fight in my chat again, man. Try not to be so strung up. Like, I'm just gonna like ask you this go
Dude,
red, like you were fighting like
kind of a redditor.
Yeah, no need to start shit. But the thing is that, like, you know, this time try to be a little bit less high strung up in my chat. Because like yesterday you were, or not yesterday, like Friday, you were like fighting everybody like over the dumbest shit. I only have social media lookup things. I don't actually use social media terminally. That's kind of where I'm getting at. You know, I just use it to like watch things and engage with people or chat with people. But other than that, it's like, you know, it's just like one of these things. It's like I don't really take a large connection. But yeah, you have more some green hats in the chat. We can probably get that going on. But yeah.
Also,
no.
What I don't get is like these people think that they're smart enough to implement all this tech stuff, but they're firing the people who are competent at tech stuff. And while they're trying to
all the catch-22s of this entire like bourgeois regime, if you want to call it that, is that they're quite literally, they want to have their cake and eat it too. It's like, you know, with the AI stuff, they're jumping the gun, you know, seriously believing that when it comes to AI, that they're going to replace everybody's jobs. They're going to make everybody, like, you know, out of a job. And they're going to go through with their... I talked about it a little bit in my video, okay? They're literally convinced that the AI job apocalypse is going to happen. They're going to retreat to their bunkers, and they're going to turbo nuke the normies into depopulationism, and they're going to get away with it. Even if AI is not actually capable of doing these jobs like they think it is, it's maybe capable of doing maybe up to 10% of what they think it's capable of. You know, fun fact, I don't think AI is going to be really good at writing code unless you're really good at explaining the logic to the AI. I think, AI, you know, if you're trying to read the code, it might become more useful to be able to read and understand code than it is to write code, is because if you were, you know, get the AI to do what you want, you could write it effectively. But again, it's like these vibe coders, they don't know how to code. They don't know how to build like logical structures, but they think that they are. I think the ruling class legitimately thinks that they've struck gold. They don't need the working class anymore. They're trying to jump the gun. What's up, man? Tomorrow is Monday, Wage Rage, before the Wage Rage Express tomorrow, where we go into the office or whatever, go into the work. But the thing is, they jumped the gun with AI, thinking that they are genuinely going to replace the entire working class, and they're going to have their little, like, pedophile utopia, and it just isn't a possibility, right? And at the same time, they pissed everybody off. They pissed everybody off after telling them that they're going to replace everybody. It's like you ever seen that meme where somebody like wins the lottery, like $1 million, and they just start beating up their friends, and they beat up their boss because they're like, I just won the $1 million, you're all poor, fuck you poor people, you know, I made $1 million. And then it turns out it was like a fake lotto ticket, and it was a mistake, and they just ended up pissing everybody off. And that's what I think the billionaire class is doing with AI. It's like they jumped the gun thinking that this was their lottery ticket to basically fuck over the wagey into the permanent underclass, but it wasn't the case. And so now they're getting really nervous, is because now that they pissed everybody off, they're going in full defense mode.
Yeah.
So AI is so useless when it comes to anything innovative. I'm working on deep learning tool for JI or whatever. Another rat. See, I don't even know what that is. That's beyond me. That's too obscure for me. AI LLMs are just glorified, summarized, like Google search speech. Yes, they are. I've been saying this forever. They're not AIs. They're not artificially intelligent. They're not artificial intelligence. They're just large language models. It's just machine learning. And they're treating it like, don't get me wrong, LLMs and machine learning are an impressive technology in their own right. But, you know, it's not what they think it is. They think it's going to replace like every white collar job on the face of the planet, and it's just going to make everybody poor. It's such a deranged thing that they think that they're going to replace everybody. But go on, Trick.
Yeah, the biggest issue I see with the LLM thing is that with technology, this is like, I think, the first time where everyone, like not just the billionaire class, thinks LLMs is something it's not. And it's really weird because before, with technological progress, we had an understanding of the functionality of the tech that was implemented. But this is like basically they look at it and they think it's Star Trek when it's not. It's just a model, and the machine, you know, the algorithms aren't even that good either, based upon what I've seen from OpenAI and Grok and Anthropic. I've used Claude before too. The Chinese aren't even replacing their working class with this stuff. They're just augmenting it. But there's kind of an interesting thing. I'm so tired of people saying that AI robots will mine farm. Come on. Farm mine does. They're basically all the like blue collar jobs. You know, that's kind of the funny part, is because like as soon as like AI came about, like the ruling class dropped the tech bro narrative that they shilled for 25 years, and then all of a sudden turned to like the HRification of everything, where everything's about social skills or blue collar workers. You notice that? It's like now all of a sudden they're glazing blue collar workers. It's like Alex Karp, philosophy degree, peak word cell. Is all of a sudden, even though he probably rode that narrative about being like a polymath genius who was coding since he was a fetus or something like that for 20 years, is all of a sudden jumping on the blue-collar hype train to get a bunch of people into blue-collar work. But at the same time, it's like, you know, he's just like a talentless word cell. I've noticed that trend. It's like, but the funny part is that, like, they think it's going to replace, like, coding and tech and engineering, and then you're just going to have, like, a bunch of blue-collar workers and, like, a bunch of word cells for whatever reason, and that's their vision of reality. That's what they think is going to be the outcome of all these things.
AI can't even do my taxes properly. No, that's the thing, dude. AI is not capable of doing things unless if you already know what you're doing in the first place. I was talking with my coworkers about this, is that AI, don't get me wrong, is a fairly impressive technology in some regards, but you have to know what you're doing for it to do what you want it to do. That's the problem that most people don't actually acknowledge about AI, is that it's really just a skill multiplier than it is a skill replacement, but you've had entire industries, you know, pretending AI is a skill replacement. So, too many people equate to look at, sorry about that, man. But too many people equate the look as an actual thought. That's another thing that's kind of silly about that as well. I'll let you go, Trick. Go ahead.
Yeah, another thing that I was talking about with a friend about LLMs, people don't realize that the LLM tells you what it thinks it's correct. And so there's issues that I've been seeing where there's like a feedback loop, a negative feedback loop, because you can't tell if it's correct or if it thinks it's correct or if it's telling you misinformation, because all it is just like a word spillage salad thing. And like people, AI. Yeah, and people are just
and
like
it's supposed
falling
to be sycophantic toward you.
Yeah, people are falling toward like the analogy I heard was that LLMs are basically like the average Redditor.
Which, that's kind of the thing.
Real.
I got in an argument with like my coworkers because like they were glazing Stack Overflow. I got to go on a little bit of a rant here, so let me go on this one. I was like sitting at work and I was like, if you want to know the history of Stack Overflow and what AI totally destroyed, what AI totally deserved to destroy, if you want to talk about something that absolutely deserved it, Stack Overflow was that website that, if you ever wanted to go to a place, if you think engineers are elitist, right? Stack Overflow was the one place you could go to and ask a question, have your intelligence insulted, and still walk out empty-handed and not have your question answered. So it's like turbo Reddit. It's like Reddit on steroids. It's way worse than Reddit. And unironically, people have talked about this for quite some time, about like how like Stack Overflow wasn't even a place, because it was originally supposed to be a Q&A forum for programmers to ask questions. But if you asked too much of a newbie question, you would have your intelligence insulted and you wouldn't be able to actually have any of your things answered. Your thread would be shut down and they would say, this question has already been answered, and some fat Redditor would, like Turbo Redditor, would like redirect you and say you couldn't even ask a question. So it essentially became entirely useless. When ChatGPT came out, the Stack Overflow traffic quite literally plummeted. It went vertically down because people would rather ask a robot a question, an honest God question about something, than have their intelligence insulted and not have their questions answered. Okay? So AI has done a couple of good things. Like, if you've ever worked with like some snobby prick when you're just trying to ask an honest to God question and then they just install your intelligence and don't even answer the question. Like, if you want to talk about truly obnoxious elitism, like Stack Overflow was the center of that, and that place died quickly. But I was sitting at work like that. I was like, oh boy. I'm surrounded by like borderline Redditors. I'm in a place where like if you ask a question, you're gonna have your intelligence insulted. So this is gonna be the workplace dynamic of like you just want to talk to as little people as possible, do your tickets, and go home. And that's what I realized. Meanwhile, the math exchange is actually helpful about 60% of the time. I don't know why, dude. Okay, I'm not actually a programmer by background, by training. I'm an electrical engineer. And the interesting thing is, I don't know what's with computer science people. And I think it's because like 10 years ago, computer science was incredibly competitive. I remember even at my school, I wanted to take a graphics programming class. And it was incredibly difficult to actually do that, is because the fact is the classes would fill up before I could even like register for them. And so the thing about computer science is like, I think because of that competitive atmosphere, it's like, you have a very cutthroat thing where it's like, you don't want to answer somebody's question. You want to basically withhold information from them as much as possible. And the math stack exchange, it's like the exact opposite of that, is because everybody who studies mathematics as a major already knows that they're going to be like homeless, so they don't really care, so that you can have a good conversation about that. You might not even understand what they're saying, but you probably could ask an honest God question, they'll explain it to you, and you'll still like walk out like not understanding what they're talking about. That's my experience with the math department. But Matt, I'm kidding, math was fun. But the thing is Stack Overflow with computer science, it's like with Stack Overflow, it's like it was the one place you could have this culture where you could ask an honest God question and you would never get your answer to anything. You just walk out more insulted than you actually got your answer. People don't know shit regarding tech. I just learned that command prompt uses your primary path, so you have to make a batch CMD to specifically shoot files to specific folders in common sense, right? Yeah, dude, you will have shit like that. You could ask, like, hey, I'm a noob on this, and they will literally still insult your intelligence. That's why, Stack Overflow died, like, like at the speed of light when ChatGPT came out. I remember when some feminists demand manga and banned, but when you read 50 Shades of Grey. Yeah, okay, I could talk about gender double standards, but I'm kind of going on a rant about Stack Overflow, man. My fellow groupoid, man. Yes, nerds, absolutely. But these, Jack Spider, these are the most insufferable nerds you'll ever meet. Like, Stack Overflow are the nerds that's like, you know, you don't even learn anything cool. Alistair can't math confirmed. Absolutely, dude. 2 + 2 = fish. That's what I know. A lot of type personalities, I'm quite blunt. He's white collar, so it's something he isn't used to, but as long as he's not continually hounding me about it, we're chill. That's true. Meninist Alistair, yeah. That's kind of the funny part, is because, like, a couple of my earlier videos, I'm not really a Meninist, but, like, a couple of my earlier videos basically talked about a lot of the double standards that you kind of deal with throughout society. You know, there really aren't any social welfare policies for young men, and it's kind of funny is because you're kind of gaslit about having a privilege you don't have. And I said that in my older videos, is that, like, that's something that probably is what rankled, you know, and irritated a lot of young men, is because the fact is the left can't come out and say, you know, we care about people, we want social democratic policies, we need to have an empathetic civilization that takes care of one another, and then quite literally antagonize men when, you know, men occupy the vast majority of homeless people, and then pretend that they have a privilege that they don't have, right? You know, that was one of my criticisms of, like, you know, feminism when it came to those talking points, and that's why, you know, when it comes to socialism, it just didn't resonate with young men. And I told other socialists about this. It's like, unless if you address this problem, you know, you won't be able... Yeah, you won't ever be able to, like, reach young men or even talk to them about socialism, honestly. They're just going to mock it out of, like, a sense of resentment. I mean, after all, you have an entire generation of young men who are never going to own their own home, and then you're kind of gaslighting them. They're more privileged than they actually are. Of course, that was going to essentially backfire. What's up, dude?
I was just saying virtue signaling good.
Oh, yeah, virtue signaling. That was... They don't want to teach that. Why the fuck are they on that side? Yeah, I don't know. The only privilege is class privilege. At the end of the day, it really is because the fact is like, look at, like, how they're bending all of civilization to basically benefit them. They don't want competition between companies. That's why they ban Chinese EVs. But then they want competition with the working class, so they import infinite foreign labor. You know, you gotta love that double standard. You know, you gotta consistently prove your worth as a wagee to the owner class, otherwise they'll outsource your job to India and then, you know, basically replace you. And then on top of that, you can't even get a cheaper EV even if you're out of a job. You have to actually accept that fact that you're going to be paying like $75K for a new car here in the United States, even though there's like 10K cars that are being produced in China. Don't become homeless. Don't become a virtue signal pawn. Yeah. So, yeah. No, fun fact. I am looking forward, I'm sure everybody is looking forward to eventually go back into the wage cage tomorrow. I know you guys are dying, you're chomping at the bit, because you're ready to earn that hard-earned cash to barely afford the place that you get to live in, and send the vast majority of your taxpayer dollars to either Israel, Ukraine, or rich pedophiles and their subsidies.
Or
I can't wait to increase shareholder value!
Set everybody off.
I paid for the car I just fucking took my retirement out for. So,
yeah.
At least for a fucking down payment. And, yeah. Still gonna cost an arm and a leg, though.
Yeah, you know, what I hate the most about these people, what I hate the most about these rich people, is that if they want to be rich in their mansions and leave everybody else alone, because I've already said it plenty of times in my videos, I don't have an issue with somebody being more, like, better or well off than me. I don't have a problem if somebody's more wealthy than me. I don't give a shit, to be honest. If somebody is independently richer than me, it's never crossed my mind being like, this person has a moral obligation to care about me. I've never been that kind of person. Maybe it's because I'm a bit of an individualist at the same time. But the thing is, what I hate the most is that if you do want to be an individualist, you want to check out of society, and you just want to be left alone, they will literally rewrite the rules of all civilization to make sure that you basically stay in line, that you stay in your wage cage. It's like with the digital ID stuff. It's like they want to be able to make sure that you can't leave the system, which is funny is because these same people who pass digital ID, you know, would probably scream bloody murder if some random-ass wagee took a drone and started flying it over their mansions. Watch how quickly Fox News would bitch and complain if, you know, random people started surveilling their properties with drones or whatever, right? You know, they would call it a crime, they would say it needed to be criminalized, but then they would go on the same exact stage telling everybody else that they have to give up their privacy so rich pedophiles can diddle children in their mansions. You know, the interesting thing, because I've seen it in my comment section a lot of the times, especially people saying, like, I just want to buy a van and check out of civilization. They're trying to criminalize that. And I've said it in my previous videos, is because they're trying to criminalize it is because they need you begging in the street for your life, addled up on drugs, as a humiliation ritual for the rest of the working class in society to get back in line. To basically say, like, this is what you're going to become if you don't play by our games. If you try to check out of civilization, like if you go watch my earlier videos talking about you can't escape the hamster wheel, the police will literally tear down your homelessness encampment, even if you become fully self-sufficient in the woods, because they need you begging in the streets for a job so you pay $2,000 a month in rent. That's the entire social arrangement that they need. It's entirely synthetic, but they need that example to be made out of you, so you basically scare all the other wages into going back into the 1 hour out commute time back into work. So you can basically, you got to go through the rounds to prove your worth to the boss, right? That's the whole point of the humiliation ritual of homelessness. That's why they don't want you checking out from civilization. And that's the brutal truth, because the fact is that when you tell the average person that they don't want you to check out civilization, you've heard this saying, if you're on the far right, you probably heard the saying, you probably said this to a right-wing libertarian, is that the people who want to be left alone will always be dominated by the people who want to win. Unfortunately, when it comes to the ruling class, these people don't want to leave you alone. They want to win, and they want to make you a perpetual rent slave in your own country, while they basically have their little mansions in the countryside. And so that requires political action. That requires taking over. What's up, Riley? Welcome to the chat. That requires taking over local governments, weakening their power within, different regions. Maybe introducing additional taxes, or maybe advancing political power of labor unions or even tenants unions to basically bust their balls, right? They can't arrest us all. They can't throw us all in jail. The more we swell our numbers, they can't shut us up. And so the thing is, it requires a level of collective action to actually bust the balls of these people, to basically put them back in line, because they're going to keep coming back at it. They're going to continue. It's like just recently, they're talking about, by 2027, your cars will have a mandatory, whatever it's called. They're required to basically spy on you and have an always-on internet connection. Of course, the PR front end is like they said that they care about the children, but it's their PR front end is that it's so they can prevent drunk driving. But we all know it's because the fact is they want to turn off your vehicle if you say something offensive on the internet or some stupid shit like that. That's why A2 exists. I agree. 100%
Yeah, and
with
Ford
Alex
also got a patent going to monitor your emotives, your emotions, your facial expressions in the car using cameras.
It's going to be mandatory for the wagee to always be smiling, is because the customer is always right. And if you're not always smiling and coming into the wage cage with a smile on your face every single time, you're going to get fired, is because you're not being a team player, wagee. The HR is going to have to give you a visit.
You must smile even when answering the phone.
Yeah.
Here's the crazy thing about all this. They think they're gonna win, but there's two things. One, they're killing the circus, they're killing the bread, and two, they think it's...
Go on.
No, sorry. The last thing I was just gonna say is, like, they think they have everything planned. They're rushing everything. And when you rush stuff, that reeks of desperation to me.
And 3 green hats.
Like, that's the thing. Yeah, the thing is that eventually more people are just going to put on the green hat. But here's the biggest fuck up that they're making, is that they're just passing the cost. They're expecting everybody to just be a wagey. Yeah, let's get some green hats in the chat. Okay, if you're not a true wage rager unless you get some green hats in that chat, start copying and pasting and spamming that shit. Let's get some wage rage in the chat. But the thing about it is they're just going to pass the cost to the working class at the end of the day. And that's what I think is going to really break it. If you look at the warehouse Luigi incident, why did he do it? I said this in my last live streams. I said it in my last videos, is that I bet you almost on a dime, like almost 100% certainty, that he had a conversation with his boss. He was like, boss, I can't afford this commute. Can you give me a pay raise? And he said, no, wagey, you have to continue working for what you got. And he probably went negative on the numbers in his bank account, realizing that there's no possible thing. And he just crashed out. He went from wage rage to wage rampage at that point. He just went full green hat at that point. He put on the Luigi the hat and just started burning shit down. It's because, at one point or another, when, you continuously just pass the costs to one section of society, eventually it's just not sustainable. Dissident, I see you in the chat. You actually coined this term. They're trying to squeeze blood from stones. There's nothing left to exploit. And so at one point or another, people just chimp out. And so the thing is that while they're passing the cost of all this surveillance tech to the worker, because I bet you they're expecting you to pay for that 75K vehicle that they can shut down at any point in time. It's kind of like with 3D printers and why they're so unimpressive nowadays. They got to back end everything. They want to back end everything and make you pay the cost for their surveillance. And that's what's going to break it eventually. Yeah, Red Star and socialism. I like that one too. And so the thing about it is that, like, eventually people are just going to snap at it. They're not going to care. It's just going to become completely unsustainable. You're going to see riots, you know, in the streets. I mean, here's my banking. I'm going to make this bet with you guys right now, and you can call me out on it. You can come back to my chat 6 months down the line and say, Alistair, you were wrong. But in 6 months' time, there are going to be riots in the streets over the cost of living crisis if it doesn't improve. Is because right now people are running on borrowed time. They were already running on borrowed time prior to the gas price spikes. You know, they were already running on that. Klarna debt has already significantly skyrocketed to such a degree that it's like people are buying groceries on that. And that was last year. Now it's gas prices, which is also going to make everything else more expensive. And so my call, and I said, you know, probably about a year ago, is that you're going to start seeing more instances like the warehouse Luigi guy. Is that what's going to happen is that, like, 6 months from now, I'm betting that you're going to start really seeing things take off. You're going to see riots in the street over the cost of living. It's going to be an Occupy Wall Street 2.0. But the difference between the Occupy Wall Street movement and what's going to happen in the next 6 months, and I'm going to call right this very second, this one is going to be far more cynical and violent than it was with Occupy Wall Street. Because with Occupy Wall Street, you know, a lot of the times the media would mock them and say that their demands were unreasonable, they weren't going to get anything, whatever, right? This one is going to have way more clear-cut demands, is because they felt the sting of defeat. And there is no cost anymore that is acceptable where this sting of defeat is going to be tolerable now, is because people are going to make it very clear what their demands are. They want lower cost of living. They don't care. The fact is that even 100 years ago, rich people got the shit kicked out of them for making meat as expensive as it is today. This isn't new. You heard it on the first stream with Deconstructing Narcissism, and it's kind of tragic that I couldn't get him on the stream last time for the second live stream. But the thing is that he can't even afford ground beef. And a lot of people can't even afford ground beef. I kind of spoiled myself today. I bought some ground beef like the other day and made some ground beef tacos. I know white people tacos or whatever, because why not? They're tasty. I like them. But the thing is that, like, that's now becoming something that is a rarity. But the average person who's making 20 or 30 bucks an hour can't even afford that. Welcome to the chat, Meister. Welcome to the chat. I think one of the reasons why there are a lot of investments in LLMs is to improve mass surveillance systems. It's one of the things they could theoretically be good at. I actually 100% agree with you. Here's the thing. They're glorified interpolation machines. They're glorified inference machines. And so the thing is when it comes to like a surveillance, it's actually kind of perfect for that. Also creating large bot networks that eat up a ton of water and electricity to gaslight people on social media. That's another use case too. Typical white people tacos. Absolutely, man. And they're actually pretty good, you know. But, you know, it was about $6 per pound for ground beef, and it wasn't even the leanest meat too, right? That's the crazy thing. Now, if you tell this to the boomer generation, they will gaslight and lie to you and tell you it's because of your avocado lattes or some shit like that, right? I don't know what the avocado lattes, that sounds nasty, but avocado toast in your lattes. Hey, Alistair, would you consider making videos on Marxist theory and how it relates to what's going on? Actually, yes, absolutely. In fact, I used to do videos on economic planning back in the day, and you look at my older articles from 2023. Yeah, my politics really hasn't changed from that day. I'm still economically very similar to that. The only thing I would say right now is that when it comes to an economy, if I were to run an economy today, if the Alistarian regime with the Luigi hat started today, how would I run an economy in that society? Well, first of all, any major industries that literally don't make any sense, where there's no competition whatsoever, like things like infrastructure, like networking, power, these things would be turned into state-owned enterprises. Any large industries would be turned into state-owned enterprises. They would be brought under the scope of the planned economy. Anything where competition is actually good, I'd use antitrust laws to instigate competition between industries, because I actually do like competition. But some things, naturally, such as infrastructure, make no sense, is because there's not really any real competition there. Yeah, check it out. It's in my link tree. So, you know, but for like smaller level firms, I would just allow them to be the worker cooperatives, if I could actually speak English today. Worker cooperatives, or, you know, maybe family-owned businesses at most. It's kind of funny, is because I've talked a little bit about Georgia's land policy on my channel as well, where I believe that, you know, when it comes to land, how to address the residential property question, when it comes to boomers and their 9 Airbnb rentals and the BlackRock and owning so many properties. One thing I would do is the new policy in the Alistarian regime would be that, you know, when it comes to a residential property, when it comes to a home, you can either own one continuous piece of land or two continuous pieces of land. Obviously, people need to move and stuff like that, but you cannot own multiple properties, you know, beyond your first two that you actually live in. You have to actually occupy it. Basically, restricting ownership or recognition to people who actually live in their properties. Any other properties,
Alistair, you're
you know,
worse than Hitler for that.
Yeah, I know. I don't care. I want to be the Adolf Hitler of rich people anyways. So, you know, when it comes to properties, that's the one way you could address the rent-seeking parasitism question. I know some people are going to come in the chat. It's like, what if they just register it as a commercial property? Like, rich people always like to do their sleazy shit, right? And yeah, competition is healthy. I like competition in a lot of aspects, which I would still keep a market economy in my Alisterian regime, if you want to call it that, right? But, you know, rich people would just turn a lot of these residential properties into commercial properties, and they'd lie that they're just using as rent or just kind of reclassify it. You'd need an active regime to crack down on this. Let's be real. Let's get some green hats in the chat. Get some green hats in the chat so we can get some energy. Let's get some wage rage energy in the chat to basically say we're going to be seizing these properties and we're going to give them to young families so they can settle down and have kids. How about that? You know, people like our age demographic. We're going to give these properties back to the people. So, with that being said, with the commercial properties, if you had like a market socialist economy where you had worker cooperatives, you know, occupying the vast majority of these, you know, commercial firms, this wouldn't be an issue either. And you could do, there's plenty of examples of how you could do, like, you know, business loans for these worker cooperatives or whatever. But that's how I would run my society. That's how I'd run. And funny enough, and, you know, not to get, some people are going to probably bitch at me in this chat, is that's very similar to like the current like economic model of the PRC, of the People's Republic of China. Unironically, I would say that their economy is more similar to the launch learner model of socialism, which I disagree with. If you look at my economic planning articles, and you know, from a pedestrian point of view, you might think there's not any difference between these two models of socialism or in a planned economy, but there is. When it comes to the economy in China, the SOSEC, which is their State Asset Control Board, just controls the assets of where capital is allocated for state-owned enterprises. I'm more of a fan of Paul Cockshott, if you're familiar with who that is. He's a computer scientist from the University of Glasgow. He's an ex-professor. He's already retired. But I like his ideas on economic planning. That's my personal take. So if I were to immediately start a dictatorship of the proletariat, I would first seize the Federal Reserve and then also networking infrastructure. And then I would start instituting a planned economy, whatever state-owned enterprises I would choose to actually bring a part of the planned economy. That's my take. So yeah, I'm close to seizing my landlord's property as it is. I paid almost as much in rent as the house is worth. That's the thing. That's the crazy thing, Dr. Java. What they don't tell you is that you're paying more in rent than they're even possibly paying in their mortgage payment. Is because I know that's the case, is because that was the case from a property that me and my wife were renting. It was a 3-bed, 2-bath. It's your standard family house, okay? And he was demanding $2,000 a fucking month for it. He bought it in 2013 or 2017, probably for $100K. And at most, he maybe had a mortgage payment of like $500 a month, assuming he didn't fully pay it off already. And so, clear my throat out for a second because I'm talking so fast. I think that other guy Zindon called me out on it. I think that, you know, you're right. I am talking too fast. It's screwing up my throat.
You don't want to talk like XQC there.
We're about over an hour too.
Yeah, I see it. So, when it comes to it, you know, he pays maybe $500 a month at most in a mortgage, if assuming he hasn't fully paid it off. And then he has the audacity to basically act like we're the ones that were the parasites, even though we're paying him $2,000 a month in rent. And he couldn't do repairs. I feel that, man. Like, you know, at one point or another, it's like these people are just a drag on society. They don't produce any tangible value at all whatsoever. And on top of that, they're literally making it impossible for young people to settle down and have a family or even a decent standard life. Yeah, they always find loopholes. And that's the thing. It's like you're going to have some level of corruption in any civilization. And so what you want to do is you want to set up the incentive structures where it minimizes this level of corruption, or you just minimize it to some degree. That's really the secret of it. You know, every time I try to bring up communism to my parents, they always go ape, even though they will agree with you the principles afterwards. Here, I'm going to give you an example, okay? Because it's the exact same thing with my family, and I love them to death. They're great people and all that sorts of stuff. Sometimes they get a little bit too Zio Boomer for my taste. Alistair's an AI confirmed. But let me tell you about it, okay?
I told you to drop the AI sloppy.
Yeah. So, I got an argument with my folks, and I said, yes, I am an economic leftist, probably communist leaning, heterodox Marxist, whatever, right? Yapistair confirmed. Maybe that should be my new YouTube tag. But the thing is that you could agree with everything the rich pedophiles who are running our state are doing, you know, making us all poor, making us perpetual renters, and they will say straight to your face, well, that's not capitalism, that's just communism. I mean, you're just kind of like looking at you as like, but these people are just capitalists. They're just enriching their pockets at the expense of everybody else. And it's like, you know, they're not communists, man. They're just rich people doing rich people things. They're just self-serving pricks at the end of the day. They don't even have an ideology. Like the capitalist class that we have right now does not respect the version of capitalism that most right-wing libertarians talk about. And the reason I know that is because I used to be that right-wing libertarian. I was on that side of the aisle, and I was a free market shill. I remember even when Occupy Wall Street was going on, I was that autistic right-wing libertarian that was watching Peter Schiff antagonize random-ass protesters. I know it's a pretty bit of a goofy backlaw or whatever, right? But, you know, I was a right-wing libertarian then. And so the thing is, they have like a vision of capitalism in the back of their head. And that's not to say like competition is bad. I still support it, and I don't agree with like a lot of the other leftists that are anti-competition and anti-meritocracy. But, you know, there's a level of delusion when it comes to what people expect capitalism to be, and then the ruling class doesn't reciprocate these rules whatsoever. I work in building materials, constantly hear land leeches talk about how they're just barely breaking even. You know, the funny part is they're probably saying just barely breaking even is because they took out a ton of equity from their previous properties and they're over leveraged on like 9 other properties. What they mean is they're just breaking even is because the fact is they probably took out most of their equity and they're probably over leveraged on like 10 other properties that they use that equity for. My boomer uncle evicted my dad and I from grandma's house after she died and tried to take... Oh my god, that is turbo boomer, Christian. Oh my fucking god, that actually like made my brain hurt. I'm actually impressed. Like that is so insane. Like that is peak boomer. Kick out your family and then try and run away with the property. Holy shit. So that's why I started Wage Rage Radio, dude. So, you know, people could kind of expose this kind of bullshit.
Hey, they'll sell it to BlackRock before they do to their
stories.
kids.
Yeah, kind of like Evil Morty. Yeah, Evil Morty, if he would start out as a right-wing libertarian and became a hardcore communist. Lol, debt cucks. But yeah, no, the one person got mad at me for being mean towards boomers or whatever on my channel, whatever, right? And they were like, well, aren't you, like, why are you so mean to boomers? The reason I'm mean to boomers is because they grew up in the American Golden Age, and they quite literally gaslight us about living in that Golden Age. They pretend that they're from the silent generation. They LARP like they're from the greatest generation when they're not, and then they use that to antagonize younger people and gaslighting them over reality that they had, but we don't have. And, you know, I don't know if I probably should talk about it again. Maybe I will talk about it again. But housing is a perfect example of this. Is because when it comes to housing, they lived in a world where you didn't have to worry about where you were going to live. Like there was a sense that you could fail in civilization and you would still be okay. That's why boomers act like petulant children. If you look at how like they engage in politics, they go laying down on roads, they scream and howl, especially the ones from the Northeast, is that they live in a sense where, you know, failure was inconsequential to their existence. And that's why I don't like boomers, is because they will gaslight us and say that that wasn't their reality, pretend that they had it harder than they actually had it, and then we will have to deal with paying like 60% of our income for a place that's a shitbox just to fucking live. That's why I can't stand boomers.
Must be proud.
That's why I couldn't care less about trying to reach out to them, is because I've dealt with boomers. You can even watch my older videos when I do talk about boomers. You know, one of them I even pinned on my comment section is like, you know, say, okay, renter, it's like that was their little gotcha. Like owning nothing is their little gotcha against younger generations. It's like, do you really think that's going to age as well as you think it will? Like, think this through, boomer. Do you think mocking a generation that's never going to own their home and calling them a renter is exactly a wise thing? It's like young, you know, military age men, not to Fed post too much. It's like, are the ones who hold the reins of civilization if they just get up and organize. Like, let's be real here. If young military age men just start organizing, they could do a lot of damage to the existing society and change it to whatever way they want it to be. Yeah, okay,
right
renter, yeah, just proves the point.
Okay,
Yeah.
renter.
Yeah, people
really got him now.
Yeah, I don't care if you're like a Nick Fuentes fan.
Garbage.
Yeah, the Iran war's garbage. And so the thing is that, like, you know, that doesn't mean anything. So that's why I'm an asshole to boomers. You could see my old thing. The thing is they grew up in a time, yeah, glow posting, is they grew up in a time of relative abundance, pretend they didn't have it, and then gaslight us that they didn't have it, and then do stolen valor with the greatest generation. That's why I can't stand boomers in any sort of sense. That's why I don't try to reach out to them. I don't even care if they're talking in my comment sections, because the fact is people make post-hoc rationalizations of whatever they believe. Like, they'll make up their own reality that they lived in, that they even though they were 4 at the close of World War II, they'll pretend that they were the World War II veterans and, you know, claim that they were that generation, because deep down they wish they were that generation, but, you know, they aren't. Which, again, I've said plenty of times, why would you want to be that generation? That was probably an awful time in human history to ever live through it. Boomers are some of the biggest grifters. Yeah, they are. And the thing about boomers is that, like, instead of just accepting that they had a good life and just, you know, accepting that, they pretend that they're something that they're not. That's what I hate about boomers, is they don't just accept that they grew up privileged, they grew up in a nice life. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, none of us would be here if we had the same standard of living as boomers. Let's be real here. If we had the same standard of living as boomers, people would probably still be engaging in culture war politics. At that point, I'd probably just check out because I just don't have a horse in that race. But the thing is that none of us would be here if we had the same standard of living as boomers. I would rather be in the boomer generation than live in this generation where, you know, like, you can't even find a place that you can call your own home feasibly, and by the time you actually do pay off that house, you know, you're going to be mostly dead anyways. Like, that's the crazy thing on your first property. So, yeah, that's why I hate boomers. That's how we get the new founding fathers in America. You're going to see that. Oh, go on.
Boomers also don't realize that they've fostered the creation of Gen Alpha. Gen Z, for all the stuff, they're pretty civilized. And Gen Alpha is like, I've been noticing they're like complete chaotic. Because they don't care, and I understand why they don't care. But like, when you have that kind of mentality, and you're basically being taught by the boomers, because a lot of them are still like influenced by the boomers, then you're basically just getting pure unadulterated chaos. And it's just like, dude, because like, you know, you talked about before about the speaking, right? I feel like the people who like praise and like glorify speaking, they're training the very same people to be better at it than they are, which is like the weirdest thing to me.
Yeah,
like they're training their own opposition.
In a sort of sense, yes. Like, unironically, that's actually what the last video was about, counter-elite formation, is because the thing is that eventually one or another, right, you know, like I said at the beginning of this live stream, is that you're going to have meritocracy no matter what. And all it takes is a group of people to basically recognize, Napoleon Bonaparte's a perfect example of that, where they're just going to recognize that the existing system is not going to benefit them, and they're going to form their other existing system. There is, I didn't get to mention it in the last video, I'm kind of ashamed of myself, but there's a very good video by Right Wing Coalition. And you know, I might post it in the chat. I actually really enjoyed that video, and it's titled "Why the Elites Are So Unimpressive." Is because essentially you have an elite that doesn't care about like the actual work that gives some. He gives the black belt analogy or whatever, right? A black belt at the end of the day is just a piece of cloth. It doesn't mean anything by itself. What gives it value, what gives it status, is the skills that back the status. Like, that's essentially what it is. So, like, you know, you could have a black belt, but that's not going to give you the skills of what's commonly associated with the black belt. And a lot of people have just taken on this notion that if you just take the status symbol, you know, that's good enough as a substitute as opposed to actually having the skills. But the skills will always exist there. You know, if you're good at something, it doesn't matter whether or not you're given recognition for it. You're always going to be independently good at it. And that's the thing about a gaslighting society. That's the problem with the word cell society, is because eventually the gaslighting, you know, falls apart. Whether they'd like to believe it or not, you can gaslight up to a point before essentially, you know, it just falls apart as a narrative, and then true meritocracy just comes through. My boomer mother... What's up?
Didn't they like say that, oh, your guys' generation was like the one with the participation trophies? Isn't that literally the fucking boomers?
Yeah, they're the ones who gave it out. But the funny part is they were the participation generation, because the participation trophy generation is because you got to think about it from the mind of the silent generation and the greatest generation. Okay, what created the boomer generation? You got to look at the generation that came before him. Okay, they grew up in a period where they had World War I, they had the Spanish flu, which killed a fuck ton of people, they had the Great Depression, and then they also had World War II. So, like, suffering, death, and madness all over the place, okay? That's the world that they grew up in. And so when they had their kids, by the time the post-war era began, you know, they made sure that they fought tooth and nail to fight for the material abundance and security of their children. And that's nothing wrong with the parent to do that. But the problem is, they focus too much on the material abundance of their children, rather than educating them or even trying to enlighten them to actually be decent fucking human beings in civilization and paying it forward to the next generation. That's how they got the fuck you got mine generation. It's ironic, is because the fact is that, like, they claim to be, while they LARP as this generation, they carry none of the values of the generation they like to pretend they are, right? But that's essentially like how the boomer generation kind of got that mentality, is because you had a generation of people that went through a ton of hardship, tried to make it as nice as possible for their children, but they didn't necessarily teach their children to pay it forward to their children. In fact, more often than not, boomers project their reality of existence where they had where they lived in a period where they could fail in a sort of sense, and it'd be okay. But in a sort of sense, it's like, I guess I should rephrase it a little bit, but they lived in a world where failure was inconsequential to their existence. They could always pick themselves back up on their feet, and they pretend that younger generations have that same privilege. It doesn't have that. Yeah, I'm full of so much wage rage, man. Yeah, dude, I feel that. We all got fucking wage cage tomorrow, dude. I got to spend an hour on the Wageway Express just to go into work. I fucking feel it. You know, I'm going to be honest with you. The funny part is that, like, it used to have hybrid perms. They took that away is because just like Amazon, they're doing all this return to office bullshit. And now I have to spend a total of a whole shift, like 8 hours a week, commuting just the place that I don't even want to be at the first place, right? You want to talk about wage rage? Put some green hats in the chat, man. Let's get some green hats in the chat. That's fucking terrible. Who wants to fucking spend a whole shift just commuting to work every week just to pay for a place that you don't even get to spend the majority of your time into? Let's get some green hats in the chat on that one. I feel that, Christian. I feel that. That's what this is for. Wage Rage Radio. You know, at one point or another, this is going to be the funny part about this chat, because I have a slight feeling, because we're growing so quickly. I did not expect to grow so quickly over the last couple of months. It's kind of insane. 2,000 new subscribers over the last couple of days. A lot of people are waking up to the wage rage. Is that at one point or another, they're going to do a Fox News smear on us, and they're going to bitch about, they're like, there's a bunch of crazy people on the internet, you know, using a Luigi hat. They're celebrating somebody who went after a good CEO that had a family. They're going to humanize the shit out of them. And then they're gonna antagonize
I'll crack a beer
us
if I see
play
that.
us like how to be psychos. That's gonna be a funny one. If you ever see me on Fox News having to address that, that's gonna be a funny one, because I'm gonna rip the guy a new asshole. But you know, again, please don't do a Fox News interview so we don't end up like anti-war. Dude, you know I'm much more of an asshole. So like the thing is like there's gonna be some funny things. I'm gonna insult the guy. You know that, right? Like I can't stand these people. It's like, dude, I spend 2 hours a day going to commute to a job that barely pays my fucking bills. My patience is a little bit thin for Oinker radio TV host. I'm just saying. Just a tiny bit thin. But with that being said, yeah, no. Yeah, no, we're going full wage rage. But yeah, it's going to be a good time. We've been exploding so much so far, which is kind of surprising. Like I said, I never really expected this channel to really go as far as it did. I'm surprised that so many people are actually watching my videos, is because I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be real with you guys. I'm not even used to having like 115 like concurrent viewers at any point in time. I was a nobody. Like my videos maybe got at most like 500 views over like a 6-month span. I don't want a sob story. It's not too bad. I'm not looking for pity and stuff like that. But the thing is when I started getting an audience, it kind of made me nervous. I'm not gonna lie, because I wasn't used to speaking to so many people, or so many people having you know, an opinion on what I had to say on the internet. You know what I mean? So, you know, but I appreciate you guys coming here. I appreciate the companies, because the fact is, it makes me feel a little bit less alone. Because the fact is while things are shit, while things are awful, while we're all underpaid, you know, at least we know that we're not alone in this affair. And no matter how much they want to try and gaslight us over this reality, they want to do the HR individualization and gaslight of it, is that you're not alone in this situation. We're all going through the same thing. This Fedcast succeeded. Yeah, I've heard that argument before. Yeah, the Fednator. I'm here to pacify you guys into a non-revolutionary state where you're gonna buy infinite Funko Pops and go on. You're all gonna make Reddit accounts. That's how I'm gonna pacify you. That's how you know this is a Fedcast, because I'm gonna start shilling for Reddit.
Bro, I deleted mine. Don't make me go back.
I'm gonna make like I was talking to my wife about this, but like she was showing me like there's this one subreddit that I can't stand, and somebody might call me out on this one, but she was showing me this subreddit called like showering oranges, where they like take pictures of them in their shower with their oranges. And I just want to make like one Reddit account where I just upload like, you know, soy jacks with like people holding oranges in their shower, and then see how quickly I get banned. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, that would be awesome, because that would be trolling Reddit. I fucking hate Redditors. Do it.
Yo, I can't stand Reddit either. But if you see somebody posting soy jacks on like fucking shower oranges, that's me. Probably, more than likely. Yeah, we're all stuck in this shitty situation together, man. That's kind of the thing at the end of the day. You know, we're all in this together. We don't really have a choice. And this is kind of the shitty thing. And this is why we're a different breed, okay? We're a different breed than the people who come before us, is because they think that us here in this stream right now is that we're just a bunch of people who are doing this for some sense of moral self-righteousness rather than just pure self-interest. Nobody in this chat, and maybe a handful of people, shower oranges, there we go. And nobody in this chat is here because they cared about some benevolent notion of the working class. They were forced into this engagement because they were shoved into a standard of living that they didn't ask for, where they were forced to engage in politics against their will just to have the same standard of living as their parents. And so this beast that they want to fuck with, us, we're a completely different beast. We're a completely different group of people. We're not going to cower to these people, is because at the end of the day, our enemies know what we want. We want to have the same, not even the full standard of living as boomers, just a semblance of a similar, stable standard of living where the average person should be able to afford the average house to settle down, own a car, and raise a family. That's the metric of our politics. And until that metric is satisfied, we're just going to keep coming back. That's it. It's that simple. We're going to keep pounding them. We're going to be typing green hats in this chat for as long as they ignore the fact and gaslight us that we want the same standard of living as the people who came before us. And no amount of gaslighting is going to dislodge this reality, as much as they would like to do it. That's why we're all here. So let's get some green hats in the chat so we can let our enemies know what we want out of this arrangement. They know what our terms and conditions are, and until they fulfill it and they stop gaslighting us, we're going to keep putting green hats in this chat until we actually win and get to what we want. It's that simple. Yeah,
talk about the easiest bribe ever.
Yeah, easiest bribe ever. Dude, it's so simple. The ruling class can just make it where the average house can afford the average salary can afford the average house, and everybody in my chat would fuck off and disappear. Like, even if I wanted to continue this podcast, if the average person, could afford their own house and live a decent life, I bet you all of you would just, you wouldn't care about who I was, is because none of what I said would be relevant to the existing situation. That's the truth of it. And that's kind of the funny part, is because the fact is that a lot of people assume social media influencers are people like, it's like with that stupid $7,000 that they give people for speaking positively of Israel and stuff like that. Social media influencer has always been a stupid term for me, because more often than not, when it comes to a media influencer, you're not influencing anybody. You're just telling people what they're too afraid to say. You're speaking out on the grievances that people are thinking, but they're afraid to say. That's all. It's not even an influencer. I don't have a word that's a substitute for it. You're just saying what people, feel and think, but, for whatever reason, they're afraid to say. That's it. Condos are not necessarily bad either. But yeah, I find it funny that people are scared of democratic socialism when the average European is just casually living with healthcare that bankrupt us. Yeah, that's one benefit that you probably have that us Americans don't have, is because we just go through,
we have the healthcare. We is better than you.
Yeah. I mean, I said it earlier in the stream. It's like, even the United States got pissed at that. Our ruling class got pissed off at Europeans for having free healthcare and wanted to say, like, well, because Americans have to pay so much in healthcare, Europeans should as well. So they were trying to take apart your social democratic policies so they can basically charge you guys more money. It's funny how they use that logic of, like, how more money needs to flow to people who already got plenty of money. I just want to grill, for God's sake. Yeah, that's most people. That's the normie mentality, and to be honest, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, most people would just chill out. But the reason I know, like, all the debate tactics to some degree is because I've been around the debate sphere before I actually even had an audience. I used to participate in debates, and the thing about it is that, like, when I say people make post hoc rationalizations of whatever their side is, they're more or less just kind of, signaling their audience on what they believe. They're just reflecting the values of the audience in a sort of sense. That's all they're doing. And so the interesting thing is, I know the tactics that they try to do to push people out of politics, but since we already have that overt thing of what we want, we have well-defined goals. It's like, it's kind of hard to push people out of politics. Like, don't get me wrong, they're going to try to do smear campaigns, and I'm not going to be the only one talking about the cost of living crisis. There are a ton of people talking about the cost of living crisis, but I'm just aware of the tactics they will use to shut people up, to kick them out of politics, to, in a sort of sense, just silence them into submission, is because more often than not, they rely on fear to keep people in line. I'm just aware of the little tactics. I'm also aware of the ankle biters in my chat. Some people have basically asked me, how do I deal with ankle biters or people who antagonize you? That's all I do. I just make fun of them. Is because you know why we're here. You know why the green hat's in the chat. You know what we want. I'm originally from the far right, but I'm so tired of those academic agent call the rightoids who refuse to consider different ideas. They're like the left in 2014. Exactly. I used to be that person too. I used to talk to, like, a lot of the mainstream people. I even talked to, like, I think it's like Econo Boy or whatever, to talk about, like, economic planning and the cost of living crisis. And the thing is when you don't have clout, this is the thing that they get you. If you ever try to talk about these ideas and you don't have clout, they'll literally just push you off the stage where you're not allowed to talk about it. They literally want to keep things on their talking points and gaslight you, or gatekeep you from having your talking points on stage. So at the end of the day, it's like, eventually at one point or another, they're going to be forced to engage with us. They're going to be forced to engage with our ideas and acknowledge our grievances. That's all there is to it. Try talking about this in circles outside of this one, and you'll be laughed at and said, no, that's kind of the thing. You got to look at it this way, BA. Okay, you're partially right. Well, actually, I don't know. You weren't responding to me. Whoopsie, wrong person. But the thing is like, yeah, you'd probably be laughed outside of circles on this one. Yeah, we know that, dude. Okay, we know, like, the interesting thing is that they're going to try and do this to us. They're going to gaslight us. They're going to mock us. They're going to deride us. But at the end of the day, right, I would rather not care what are... Here's the thing, okay? This is my morality. Capital is clout and clout is capital. Unfortunately, that's the way things are, Riley, and I hate it to death. I think the monetization of clout has been the most detrimental thing to the internet, and I despise it. I hate it. It's all good, BA. No, you're good, man. No beef. But, you know, I hate the monetization of clout is because the old internet didn't have this, and they use it as a proxy for truth rather than engaging in actual substantive discussion. And so if you don't have clout, they just automatically assume that your ideas are false. Notice with this channel, the people who didn't take these ideas seriously just even a year ago, you know, this is why you should not appeal to your enemy. I don't understand people who sell out their base, which is going to be an interesting conversation. But the thing is that these people who never gave a second consideration to any of the other things that I talked about now, you know, as soon as you have clout, will then just get upset that people are listening to you. But will they ever actually engage with our ideas? Will they actually talk about our ideas? Will they actually engage honestly with any of the things that we have to talk about? Will they talk about the average house price being $500,000 or even provide solutions? No. They're just going to get mad that people are talking about it. And because they don't really care whether or not what you have to say is true. They're upset that people are talking about it at all. And that's kind of the funny part. Let's talk about... Man, my throat's kind of fucking up on this one. I know, right?
I'm fluting.
Yeah, I'm booting. But here's kind of the thing, right? Honestly. So when it comes to our enemies who are going to get mad at us for talking this way, for having negative opinions of rich people, okay, think about it this way. Why should you care about what they think about you? Everyone in the chat, why should you care if they give a fuck about whether or not, you know, your ideas are, you know, gaining popular or whatever, right? These people didn't care about any of the things we talk about prior to being nobodies, okay? And if we gain momentum, they're just going to get mad that people are talking about it, is because now more people are talking about it. So, you know, when it comes to the people who hate us, why should we cower our ideas to people who never... Why should we cower our ideas to people who never gave a shit about them in the first place? I just don't see the logic in it, okay? Because at the end of the day, right, it's kind of like, why would you turn on your own base? Your base is putting you in power, and if you can achieve what your base wants, like, you know, wouldn't that be a good thing? Because the fact is, you know, whatever ideas you had before you had your base, these people mocked your ideas in the first place. And so, you know, the people like Bernie Sanders, when they sell out their base, I don't understand it, is because the fact is that, like, you know, as soon as he did sell his base, when he cucked out for the Democrat Party, it's like his base disappears. Now you're at the mercy of the people that were once your enemies, the people who never gave a fuck about your ideas to begin with. Let's be real here. So I just don't understand why people would cowtail their ideas to people who never gave them, like, an ounce of seriousness in the first place, just because you have clout. They only care about your ideas now is because people are following you. And so now they want you to capitulate to them. But these people never gave a fuck who you were before you had any clout. So why would you cowtail to them? Why should you care what they think, right? It's not them who are going to catapult you in power. They were quite literally trying to keep you out of power with these ideas out of power. So, you know, but your base is going to catapult you in power. So why would you care about capitulating to these people? This is the same reason. This is the same mentality I have with boomers. Why would I care whether or not boomers think any of the stuff that I talk about is yikesy? Why would I care whether or not they hate any of our ideas? I'm not trying to appeal to them. They didn't give a shit. In fact, they mock and gaslight us. But I can reach out to the people who are going through the same thing as me. You know, who have to spend an hour commuting just to go to a job that doesn't even pay the bills in the first fucking place. So, yeah, it's all good, man. I'm about to close off the stream in about, like, a couple of minutes. But that's what I don't understand about, you know, people who sell out their base. They're the ones who are going to catapult you in power, and the people who hate you only care about your ideas is because they got popular in the first place, and now they're just seeking to contain you. So, why would you ever care about people who hated you in the first place? Don't capitulate or cowtail your ideas to impress people who don't even like you in the first place. That's my take. I never understood that. And yeah, that makes me a polarizing asshole, but again, like, would you rather be honest with people who are already on your side, or would you rather try and cudgel your opinion just to cower before somebody who hates you already? I don't understand impressing people who don't even like you in the first place. But with that being said, I don't want the stream to go, yeah, not the 1 hour commute. Yeah, that's me. But with that being said, I do appreciate your guys' company, and I hope that inspired some hope for you guys. And so, you know, hope to see you in the next stream. I'm going to try and do it mostly on Friday. I kind of just started this one is because a couple of people were asking me if I was going to do more streams more often. And I'm going to be honest, more people have shown up than I thought would show up, to be honest. I'm really surprised how many people... Yeah, You can do a call-in. I got to figure out a call-in system so it's like fair. We can get more people on the stream, but also it doesn't get cluttered. Because one of the things that people complain about the last stream is that there was too many people on stage, too many people talking, and so therefore people couldn't have a discussion. But with that being said, I'm going to see, since the stream did pretty well, I'll probably do more streams more often. I'm going to try and shoot for Friday with you guys, and we can continue doing more Wage Rage streams, and I hope to see you guys around. You know, take care, and have a good day, and try and stay sane during the Wage Rage on your drive into work. Take it easy, y'all.